Hey everybody, welcome to the channel. Today we're going to talk about how to fix a natural light color cast in Photoshop or Lightroom. And this is actually a pretty frequent problem that I've run into. Actually, when I first started shooting, and for years, if I was shooting in natural light, I would say, hey, that's great, it'll be easy. What I see is going to be what I get. And of course, that's not really true. If you're outside and you're in the sun or the sky so bright that it will overpower any other light sources, then you often have pretty even color in your photo, unless there's something like, a reflecting object nearby that creates a color. But generally, you're in pretty good shape. And even if you're in a natural light studio, and I mean a studio with really big windows, and often natural light studios have windows on two sides out of the four, there's so much outdoor light that it creates even light pretty much all around, or even colored light. Now the problem is, when you are actually in a studio with maybe only one window, or in an actual house, or something indoor where you only have light coming in from certain directions, you often can get a color cast. And you'll notice that the color from the window might be very different from the color in the room. And also, you have the lighting indoors to worry about. What often happens is that when you get home and look at your photos, those colors that come from the different sources are much more accentuated than what you saw when you were shooting. And that's something that you got to fix. And it's not a quick fix. It's not hard to do, but it can often take several steps. And it's something that you often have to do and takes a lot of time. So let me show you what I mean. We're going to jump in, but before I do that, I just want to mention, I'm not an expert on many technical things. For example, I often have to look up things with a camera, or I won't know everything in Photoshop. I try to focus on problems that you would actually run into and that you actually have to spend time fixing. And so when I'm shooting, you get home, you have to process photos or whatever work that you're doing. There are issues that come up that you didn't think of and can be really time consuming. And so my focus is how to execute to get to a result. And that can be very different from knowing Photoshop inside and out. So, all right, let's jump in. I'll show you what I'm talking about. So let's take a look at this photo. This is the beautiful Saoirse, and I could have that name wrong. So Saoirse, I'm so sorry if I butchered your name. I looked it up, and there's an actress named Saoirse, and so I'm kind of concerned that I might have forgotten this or remembered incorrectly. So sorry about that. Saoirse is a pro model, though. She's very experienced, has worked in lots of campaigns, and she's with One Management here in Los Angeles. And we did some shots for her portfolio. So we took this photo inside a house, and it's an older house. But if you look at this really carefully, you'll see that up here, it is very, very orange, and it's light coming from these two windows over here. And she's very orange, oversaturated, and there's even some hints of some green. You can see also that the dress is really black. And then, if you go to the bottom half of the photo, if you look down here, this dress is really blue. The dress actually was blue. Maybe not this deep a blue, but then her feet down here are really pale. So obviously this part was more blue. And then we have this green color cast that is coming in from a light over here, I think. So it's pretty extreme. And so this is something you definitely have to fix. So why don't we go ahead and jump in. I made a mistake. That should not be there. I've actually already done this. So let me show you. And this is my full edit. But this is the original. This is what it looked like straight out of camera. And this is from the raw file. So I did make the corrections, at least and these are all corrections that you can make in Lightroom or Photoshop, just in camera raw. The rest here is retouching and so forth. We won't deal with that in this video. But this is what it looked like after. So you see over here, we've cleared this up. I think I like the skin tone here much better. It's not as saturated, not as orange. We've this light is more whitish, if you will. There's still some dark parts in here, but mostly this is blue. You see it's brighter blue down here than up there though. And then you see her legs are much more natural. This skin tone matches that a little better. And also, we still have a slight color cast, but it's reduced. So, okay, let's take a look at what I did to do that. All right, so let me show you what I did. I'm going to give you the overview, and then we're actually going to do it. But let me show you what I actually did, give you the fast overview, because I actually did this. So let me go over the steps I took, and then that'll give you the idea, and then we can go over it in more detail. So I have two versions of this here, this photo here. This is the original. So basically, I have this, and I set it to default or whatever the original was, straight out of camera. And this is what we just went over. And this is where I ended up. So this is the first round of, this is the round adjustments. You can see now that this is much more even, skin's good and so forth. Let me jump into camera raw and just make sure my screen covers everything. Go a little lower here. There you go. And let me show you some of the adjustments I went through. So the first you'll notice is this one where on the color, it's at 4240. If I go back to as shot, it's 5100. So that's closer to the original. So now let's go to 42. Oops, sorry about that. 4240, I think that was. So you see I made that adjustment, and I did that by, basically I ran the slider over to see where I want, and I did this by eye. Okay. The next step was basically a series of masks, probably about, I don't know, 10 to 13 of these. And here we go into the masking. And let me show you what I do with these masks. I'm going to zero all these out first. And that will, so I can show you each one individually. There you go. So that's closer to what it looked like originally. Let me just check, make sure I nullified all those. So here's the first one. Basically, this is a mask on the bottom. So take a look. When you add the mask, it's much warmer. See that? You see how it's blue? And so I basically took up the color temperature on that part of it. And now also the house, the color on the house matches much better. You'll notice that this gets a little too blue right here. And now her skin tone matches better. The floor looks like it belongs more in the room. And so you see how here this looks more even. So basically I have to do that by eye, right? And this is how much of the mask is covered. It's a linear gradient basically. The next one is to reduce this little bit of green in here. So you see that? There you go. And then it's still a little bit, but it's not as glaring. So now I added a little bit more just to reduce that just a little bit. So this is a radial gradient. Okay. Let's see. The next one, here we go. So here I basically took a brush to mask the legs to get this. You see how this is so white compared to that? So now that will come closer to that. So I basically, all I did was I took a brush and then I took the color temperature up. Here we begin working on the dress. And this is just a mask. This was done, this is a brush done by hand. So you'll see that's the brush. And it covers that much area. And basically all I did was warm it up. There you go. That's the original. Sorry, made it cooler. And added the blue. There you go. So you'll notice that we still have some imperfections in there that kind of, aren't quite right. So I had to do a little more detail work. So here you go. This mask is right there. It's that spot right there. So I made that just a little bit. You'll see that it's a little bit pale, like a pale blue. So I wanted that to be a little stronger. So that's basically what happens with that one. And there's a few more that are really small. That's another spot. So now you see how small that is, but I sort of, when things notice my eye, they sort of bother me a little bit. See how like it's a little bit gray? So I wanted that to be a little bit more blue. And I could have done more, but I didn't. I tend to not go for perfect because then it seems almost too unreal. And so here you go. Here's another one. Same idea. Actually, let me do that first. Just this little spot in here where it needed more of an adjustment. Also this one. There you go. So you see how it's still a little bit pale? So I did it again and added in some more blue in there. And then this one, I think I just took down the face a little bit so it's not as orange. There we go. So those are the masks. Make sure I have them all. And then if we go back here and there you go. So you see, basically it looks much more even. You see that if you look over here, you see that this is more continuous. It looks like the same, more of the same, the tone here is closer to the tone here, same here and here. So without the mask, you know, there's a bigger difference over here. The floor also looks much more like it's the same room. And then we still have a little bit of green, but I was okay with that. I might, in the next round, I might try to reduce that even more. So, and then this dress is much more blue. There's still some spots in here I could fix. But like I said, I don't try to make everything perfect. Otherwise, it doesn't quite look real. So this, and even this is a little bit of a brighter blue. This is a bit of a duller blue. So, you know, you could fix that as well. I didn't in this case. So, okay, let's go into it. There you go. So that's the original. And here, sorry, that's after the editing, and this is the original. So let me show you what I did. I'll do a couple things. You'll see that the frame is wider. So generally what I tend to do first is I tend to straighten everything out. So I'm looking at the windows here on the sides. And what I do is I rotate the frame a little bit. Something like that, which will, so that the windows are almost even. Now, in many cases, they will never be exactly even. And then what I decided was, you see there's a lot of space on the sides, so we cropped it. And all you had to do, and see this is the green, it's much more noticeable now. This is even bluer down here, but we're going to take that out. So what I tend to do is I tend to leave a little space above the head and a little space under the feet and a little more above the head than under feet. I'm going to center her. And then I think I'm just going to even out the windows a little bit so that I get a little bit of each window. I don't need a lot. Now you notice that they won't be perfectly straight, but that's okay. And I could center her more like this. Let's see, maybe I'll just put it here. Let's take a look. So if I say okay, that's what it looked like. Let's compare this to, interesting, actually pretty close to what I did last time, with a little bit more. Okay. Yeah, it feels I did a little bit too much on the rotation over there. Coming up in just a second, so let's look at, and we're just going to turn this over a little bit. Now, the other way is I look at the vertical line, this line, this line, and this line. I'm shooting a little bit low, so we're going to get some distortion. But this is pretty straight. This is sort of straight. This is a little bit off. That's okay. I think that's closer. So there we go. Okay, pretty close. to what I did last time. So let's go ahead and now let's do some masking. So actually let's go back, and first we're going to take this down. So 4200, that actually, I mean, just by eye, that looks pretty good to me. That's too much, too orange. That looks closer, 40. I know it's at 4240, but I'm just doing it again. There you go. And then, see the contrast is a bit high, so I'm going to take the highlights down somewhat. I'm going to take the shadows up so that we get, there we go. And does this give me anything? A little bit. I don't necessarily want it too dark. We've got a lot of shadow over there, that's fine. And then, there you go. We're going to take the highlights down just a bit because I don't want this part to be too much. So, okay, so let's look at the color again. I'm going to go down a little more maybe, and then take this up just a tad. There you go. I can see her. I judge this by how well I can see her, and it's okay that this is shadow, but I want to make sure I can see how beautiful she is. There you go. Okay, so if I adjusted the lighting, I've evened it out a little bit, and then I've adjusted the color globally. And now we have to adjust the color by parts. So I'm going to go in here and start with the bottom, because this is the biggest section. And all I'm going to do is take this down. Whoops, I mean the other way. Warm it up. So so I'm judging. So you see how this is too blue, and this gradient I'm looking at? I can look over here. So this looks relatively even. This looks okay. It's pretty close. There you go. I don't have any green or purple problems, I don't think. Could go a little darker, maybe, so that'll give a sense it's lower in the room. There you go. I'm kind of feeling this is still a bit too orange, so let me go back and make a quick adjustment on the orange. I'm going to take this down. Actually, let me play with this just a bit. So in here, this is color mixer, and I'm looking just at this orange. I might want to, it's still very saturated, so I might have taken this down a bit. So you see how, there you go, that's better. And then I could probably brighten that orange a little bit. Cool. I think I still want to take the highlight down a little bit, maybe shadow up a little bit more. That's better. Okay, see, much, a little more even, not as strong in the orange. I can actually take it down even a little bit more probably. There you go. Okay, so now let's look at all these other problems. Well, definitely the legs are much, much too white. So here we go. We're going to go in here. We're going to take a brush, and what I do is I zoom in. There you go. And we go in here, and we're going to take this brush, make it larger for a moment. Whoops. Okay, I'm going to go back because I think I need to feather much less. Otherwise, the edges are going to be hard. So here you go. Let's really go through this. Unfortunately, you have to be very careful. Otherwise, the color is going to spill over. So I'm shrinking. There you go. You can tell that this can be very time consuming. Now you can select also, there's other ways you can do this, but I like to do this in Camera Raw because then I can change the temperature. I can also do it outside of Camera Raw, but then it doesn't have the same temperature controls. So I'd rather stick with that. So let's go with this. There you go. And I'm trying to be very careful not to get this to spill. Of course, if it does, I can correct it. I'm going to go over that a little bit. There's always like a little bit won't kill you. A little bit of going over won't kill you. So that looks pretty complete. I could subtract, for example, if I thought there was just a, there's a little bit of overflow here on the edges. All right, so now you can see this shows the overlay. So what I can do, let's go back to the full, and let's take out that. And now if I warm it up, see how far, somewhere around there, that's going to match better. But color changes as the brightness changes. So let's see, we're going to make it a little bit brighter probably. Not contrast, sorry, that's the wrong one. There you go. I want a little warmth, not too much. A little bright, but I think I want shadows maybe a little darker. There you go. Cool. This is actually a little darker than in my other version, but that's fine. Okay, so that's that part. Let's take care of this. Let's see what we can do about this. I'm going to do something different. I think I use, let's try linear gradient. And now, since it's yellow-green, let's see what if we do if we push this over. And then take this down. That's a little too blue. There you go, that's better. Wow, okay, really have to kick that up. So if it's not enough, which there's still some, I'm going to do a little bit more. This time I'm going to use a circular gradient. Could feather a bit more probably. And then let's do this. So we're going to take that down. There you go. It's almost gone. I think I'm going to darken it just a tad. There you go. So there you go. So by moving this to the right into the purple and taking this into the blue, I've gotten rid of most of it. There we go. Great. So let's see how that looks. Okay. And let's go. I'm going to go on, but okay, let's add another one. Cool. So looking at it, it looks fine. All right, so now we have the dress. And we do need to make this bluer. So let's see. Let's take this mask. Actually, that's... There you go. Oh, that's a radial. I actually don't want the radial. Okay. I think that's an extra mask, but I'm not going to worry about that for now. Or maybe it is. Let's go back. Is this the one? Yeah, okay. So this is an extra mask. We can delete that. So I'm going to go to the brush. And let's look at this. I'm going to feather, medium feather. Make this a little larger. There you go. The rest is black, so I only need the part that I'm going to see. Let's smaller. There you go. And I'm going to try to be, I'm going to take the feather down and try to be a little more accurate here because I don't want spill onto the skin. There you go. Okay, so let's look at that. So let's take away the overlay and let's take it into the blue. There you go. That matches that much better. A little too much right there. Okay, there's not much to be done here, I think. Maybe just a little bit. There's still a little yellow. I'm going to take a little bit of that yellow out. So let's look at this. Now this is still a very bright blue. I can see this is still kind of grayish, so I'm going to just add a quick mask here. Take away that gray. There you go. There's also a little bit here in this area. Let's do this whole area. It's a little pale. Make all this a little bit bluer. Better. And then we got a couple spots. See how this little white? That's really bright, so I'm going to darken this just a little bit in here. Take over that way so we can see it. There you go. And it's, yeah, let's darken the highlight a bit. Maybe take down and make it even blacker. Cool. Just to even this out where there's a little bit of black, I'm just gonna lighten some of this so the black is not so black. So I'm just going to lighten this up a little bit. Maybe take up the shadow slightly. Anything else? Again, there's more you could do. We don't have to go too crazy on it. I'm going to take a brush and just, it's a little paler blue. Just, whoops. Let's do this again. Let's take the brush. Add brush. And maybe let's take a look at it. It's probably a little too blue. Let's kick up the saturation a bit. Maybe I'll take up the shadows. Not too much. Actually, that matches better. All right, there we go. So I think now that's better. I still think this is, oh, I still have one more. See how this is not really skin tone? So now we're going to take a brush. And I think I did not have this step earlier, but I'm looking at this and feeling it's very necessary. So unfortunately, this is just detailed stuff. It will take time. As I'm sure you can tell, it is sometimes a little hard to be precise with this. So I'm just going to subtract a bit and just take this a little bit out. And then let's look at this arm. See, it's a little too pale. There you go, much better. think that'll be okay. And you could do one more thing. You see this is a little green. I'm not sure where that green is from. We'll do one more mask. And we can go back into here and at least reduce the green by going to purple. Maybe take down, there you go, that's more natural. So she doesn't look like an alien. Okay. So there we are. I still think this is probably a little too orange. If I wanted to, I could take a gradient. I'm going to go big on this gradient because I think the top is a little too warm. And then, there you go. Much better, I think. And here, I think the floor is a little bright. So I'm actually going to take down the highlights a bit so that it doesn't draw the eye as much, perhaps. Okay. So, in a minute, whenever the computer's ready, you'll see the difference. There you go. Let's compare it to what I did before. Close. See, I should have done that arm. That's okay, because I think when after I do all the retouching, I still put a color grade on it. So that'll help with the arm. But, so now, if we look again, this is much more even over here. Seems like this is even. The floor looks closer to the others. I've gotten rid of the green, orange here. The legs seem to match this better. I've taken this down a bit so it's not as saturated. And then once you do that, you can go ahead and proceed to do other things. But first, I like to even everything out so that everything looks like it's a normal picture. So that is basically it. You can tell that took at least, I'm thinking it's like 20 minutes or more, but we can figure it out when I edit this thing. But I hope that helped. Unfortunately, sometimes this is just the stuff that you got to deal with. And if you're doing this for a client, I just think it's stuff that you have to do. Otherwise, it looks kind of funny. It's a good thing to do. It's something I didn't realize I had to do when I first started getting into photography, and even for several years of shooting after, it took me a while to learn how to do all these things. So I hope that was helpful. And hey, if you like it and you found it helpful, drop a like, subscribe if you want to see more of these things. I run into lots of problems, and I'm going to try to make videos about how I solve them. And that's about it for today. Thank you so much.